Hello, this is Deadpool Negative. I'm back once again. It's been a little while. I don't have an excuse. I've been working 10-hour days. I've been looking for stuff to say that I just don't. I'm not sure I have opinions worth hearing, but it's the end of the month. It's May 31st, and I want to get something out about Peter David because just been thinking about it for the past week. Um, I was not a huge Hulk fan when I was a kid. I liked the cartoon. My brother read the Hulk. He subscribed to it for a year. Brother has been never a big comic book fan like I am. And I read that year in particular when he would get, we just, well, that's not my first Peter David comic book. My first Peter David comic book that I know for certain is Web of Spider-Man #7, which is a pretty good story about Spider-Man being trapped in the Crossroads dimension. Well, having not exactly. It's about Spider-Man meaning Nightmare in the Crossroads dimension. He's being chased by the Hulk. This is the first time he really wrote the Hulk. And of course, the other, because I'm pretty sure that issue came out the same month, was the first chapter of The Death of Gene DeWolf, which, according to David, was actually Jim Owsley, Christopher Priest's idea. Um, that still remains. If you're going to do Dark Spider-Man, your name isn't Mark DeMatteis. That's how you do it, Joe Kelly. Um, that remains probably one of the best Spider-Man stories ever written. He was a great Spider-Man writer, probably just as good as he was the Hulk. He just never had the opportunity, I think. Even Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, he was playing third fiddle, and the various issues at Marvel at the time kind of kept his Spider-Man run, cut his original Spider-Man run short. But we had the Hulk, and I would have to say that from his first regular issue of the Hulk, 331, up to, I would say, the end of the Countdown storyline, 367. Not that the series is bad after that, far from it. But I think that is one of the best. But particularly the contrast between Bruce Banner and Joe Fixit is some of the best work he ever produced, that Marvel ever produced. It's some of the best Bruce Banner storytelling. It's I really wish the Joe Fixit personality had made it in the movies. I understand why it hadn't. I think Mark Ruffalo, if Marvel ever unwinds itself enough to do another Hulk movie, they should definitely try and do a Joe Fixit story this time. Um, Not that I don't like the Hulk Smash Hulk. I just like it when people other than Peter David do it. People like Bill Mantlo, who is still a great Hulk writer. I don't care what Barry Windsor Smith says. Um, and Bill Mantlow's alleged theft from Barry Windsor Smith. Again, it's very easy for Mr. Windsor Smith to make these accusations when Mr. Mantlo can't respond and Jim and Al Milgrom won't respond. But he took the idea of Bruce being an abused child and ran with it and created Hulk having multiple personalities, dissociative identity disorder. And I remember Don Simpson, a guy whose work I do enjoy, once mocked him as the character's getting a peevish diversion makeover. Um, and he would complain that David hadn't created anything of his own when David had actually written several novels at that point featuring his original IP. He didn't have a lot of IP to his name in the comics. He had plenty of novels, and I've always wanted to see Nightlife. I'm not going to tell you what that is because you got to Google it, look it up. I always thought Nightlife would have made a great television series. I'm disappointed it never made it to one. But that 331, Todd McFarlane, Jeff Perbs, Eric Larson drew an issue. Um, Del Keown, of course, began as that particular run the way Countdown ends is one of the most brilliant, best Marvel Comics runs. And I love what comes after it. I do. I like the Pantheon. I think the Pantheon sometimes feels like it belongs in another comic. I think they're great characters. And I think Marvel just felt that nobody else but David could really do them justice. So they've been pretty much forgotten. And now they're gone. Now he's gone. They're probably gone too. Um, I always say there are foundational creators. I'm going to back up for a sec. Back to the Peeves diversion Rico Weaver joke. He would do drastic revamps of the characters, but he would always stay true to the nature of the characters. Um, we had Aquaman getting his hand bit off. We had Aquaman Time and Tide. And I don't care what Kevin Smith thinks. Peter David knows who fucking Aquaman is better than he does. Um, Everything that happened with the Hulk came from what Bill Mantlo, Stan Lee, a lot of other creators had done before that, including, of course, his good buddy Harlan Ellison. Everything that he did with Spider-Man was taking it and looking at it from the same side, but he wasn't, in my opinion, ruining or violating the character. Unlike other Spider-Man revamps or tackles or brand new ideas have. I think all his revamps was at the core of the character, except for Supergirl, which is the one I think is a miss. I never really understood Supergirl. I always found it fascinating that a Jewish writer was so enamored of Catholic concepts. And I remember the retailer I was buying comics from at the time used to describe Supergirl as a Jack Chick tract. And I sort of saw that point. Um, it got really strange and really, that was the one Peevish diversion makeover that I have to say didn't work. I thought Young Justice was a lot of fun, and I thought it was very extremely repellent of DC Comics to publish a series that seemed to deliberately misinterpret the events of that series, Dark Crisis, Young Justice, while Mr. David was severely hospitalized. That's another thing. Like, I've had a lot of health issues this past year, and I've met Mr. David many times in the 90s and the zeros. I can't really remember the last time I had met him. It was 2006, likely. And it's not fair to say, I understand. I, I don't, I'm going to move on from that. I want to apologize, but he'd been sick for many years, and he'd been basically typing out miniseries for Marvel to pay his hospital bills. And like, these, new Fantastic Four miniseries, the symbiote Spider-Man. There was a point where I fell in love with Peter David's work. Um, I think it was maybe midway through the X Factor run. It was specifically when Siren had her baby. I thought what happened there was too dark, too cynical, and the big reveal about how Layla Miller knew everything just to cover up what a worthless hack Brian Bendis is. It, I don't need to see everything connected like that every time. But with the symbiote, and yeah, I'd just like to say something. Tom Brevoort used to crow that the Peter David Lee Weeks run, the big comeback that everyone demanded, was not a sales winner. And I always thought maybe, but then Tom Brevoort's a liar. He had to lie for 20 years until Brian Bendis his Avengers comics were publishable. maybe he was lying about that too. Um, I'm sorry, I'm more emotional about this than I thought, and I'm getting mean in ways I don't want to, but I also want to be honest here. Like, I have to say, the past few years, these minis he was doing for Marvel, um, Symbiote Spider-Man trilogy. Wait, no, I didn't read Symbiote Spider-Man 2099. I did not read that. It was actually a tetralogy. Um, 2099 was the last one. But I remember looking at his wife's GoFundMe for his medical care, and I realized that was probably going to be the last one. And I don't think I want to read it because that means I'll know for certain there's no more new Peter David stories to read. I don't want. I mean, it always hits you when an artist passes because they always leave work behind. Um, John Candy had two movies, three movies in the can before he passed, and it's only when it's only when it gets a few years later that you start thinking, oh, I haven't seen a book by, and then you'll be like, oh yeah, that's why. Um, I I think that's why I don't want to read the last Peter David comic because then I'll have read the last Peter David comic. I want to wake up tomorrow and I want to live in a world where there might be a chance he might do another Hulk story or another Spider-Man story. The Joe Fixit miniseries ends with the Joe Fixit Hulk and Spider-Man walking away for a night on the town in Vegas. And if you think Peter David couldn't write Spider-Man well, you go read that miniseries. Actually, I would probably put a gun to Joe Kelly's head and tell him to read that series. Because if we're going to be stuck with you, Joe, you should do your research. Um, there were times when he could be overbearing in his writing, cynical. I mean, I'm going to address something a little down the line, but there's going to be clear demarcation because I want to talk about him, then I want to talk about someone who said something about him that I can't let that pass. I think his cynicism could get dispiriting. I think sometimes he was too clever for his own good. I think the artful novel is a great example of that. Um, the Harlan Ellison hero worship. I mean, I think The End of Time and Leonard is one of the best short stories ever written, but I also think Harlan was not the hero. And I don't think Joe Straczynski is a hero, even though I love Babylon 5. And he was he and Mr. Ellison were two of the few people who really understood what was going on with Babylon 5 that weren't Joe Straczynski. And I think he did tie-in work. But there's also tie-in work. Now, Peter David was a huge fan of Star Trek. And he wrote a lot of Star Trek novels. I didn't really get into Star Trek until I watched the movies. I liked the movies. I didn't really get into Star Trek until Next Generation went into syndication. And that's why I started really paying attention to Star Trek and classic Star Trek. And well, I never read a lot of classic Star Trek novels because so much of what original Star Trek work is William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and just being on that ship. It's a mood. I can't really describe it. Um, but but the way David would do Next Generation, um, I think Peter David is the best Next Generation writer that never actually wrote an episode. Now there are three particular novels. Cuban Law, which is a thing the show should have done but never did, which was Q meeting with Loxana Troy. Vendetta, which is posits what if the Doomsday Machine was created to destroy the Borg? And you're thinking to yourself, wow, that is an effing awesome story, and it sounds so much better than First Contact. You would be absolutely correct. It's better than Generations. In fact, every Peter David novel written about Star Trek The Next Generation is more exciting and more action packed and more interesting than any Star Trek The Next Generation movie. Um, I think he took a look. I mean, there's Imzadi. How could I forget Imzadi? But that's not really a Star Trek: The Next Generation novel to me. That's a Commander William Riker novel. It was funny because I actually listened to it on tape because it was cheaper than the hardcover for some dumb reason, and it was a really great Jonathan Frakes performance. But to me, Imzadi is not a Star Trek's a next generation story. It's a William Riker story. And if you have a meme that, I mean, I remember when I was leaked the Nemesis script, which has that opening with Riker and Troy's wedding, and I saw Peter David at a convention that year, and he kind of looked at me and said, like, they told me that was never going to happen, so don't. And like I was like, so there's no, I'm like, he never said, he was never part of the I also think he was happier writing New Frontier at that point, and his own Star Trek creations, and I think that, but I could see that sorrow in his eyes. Like, I'm remembering it now. Like, he could have written the epic story that could have led to the events of Nemesis. I mean, the epic story between Troy and Riker. I mean, there are novels that lead up to Nemesis. Um, and I'm not discounting them. I've read some of them, and they're not bad. But I also feel like we really missed something there. I also think after the events of the Picard series, we've missed. I want to know what Peter David would have thought of Will Riker and Will and Deanna losing their son. I want to know what Will and Deanna were like going stir crazy with their weird kid on a planet on a planet no. I want to know. I want to read a book about what happened after the end of Picard, where um it just hits you like a ton of bricks, doesn't it? I'm not gonna read another. I mean, he had he had a wife who I met, Kathleen's wonderful woman who loved him. He had four daughters, three with his first wife, one with Kathleen, as I understand it. Um, they don't have a father. Uh, like, my health has been catastrophic and strange this past year, and I was lucky enough to have enough in the bank to ride it out, but nothing is certain, and I still have debts to pay. Like, his wife is going to be stuck paying those bills probably for the rest of her life. no matter what you can give to a GoFundMe. I had a friend who was close, was a big Aquaman fan. She was closer to Peter than I was. She died. She's so close to Peter that a mutual friend of hers, Colleen Duran, and Mr. David wrote a tribute story to her. It's Leah from the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man annual. And I keep thinking, like she's been gone. Leah's been gone since 2007. I wouldn't say I was a good friend to her. I just was a friend. And one of the first things I thought, Mr. David passed, is that they're somewhere and he's writing an Aquaman comic for her. Maybe she's drawing it. I don't know. I mean, he's gone. He, I love Marvel Comics. I'm never gonna. I love Marvel Comics so much. I Google Warren Ellis death pretty much every morning. And one of the foundational blocks of my love for Marvel and these characters will always be Peter David's Hulk. Just like Ann Nocini's Daredevil or Jim Starlin's Everything or, well, Peter David's Spider-Man, maybe. I'm sorry I'm rambling, but I wanted to be so honest here and be a little mean because I wanted to be a little mean. But I've had a hard time coming to term what I think about what I feel about this because he'd been sick for so long and the banging out these miniseries from he couldn't do. I wish he would have written Deadpool for a length of time. He did a miniseries. I don't think Deadpool was really one of his a character he was into, but a previous diversion makeover of Deadpool would be amazing. Um, I wish he had written more novels. He had more IP to his name. I'm kind of annoyed that Sir Apropos of Nothing or Nightlife never made it to TV or movies. I know the rights to a lot of his books have been floating around various TV and movie projects for many years. I again Nightlife would make a really interesting TV series, I think. I wish I could say something like I don't. Oh, I put my family last year through what as Kathleen David has probably been through. Again, I'm still here. Mr. David is not, but I know what that's like to make your family so worried about you that you might not make it. And I did make it, and he didn't. I don't know what to say. I wish I could. What I want to say is I don't do the like, oh, the Marvel is, because I just think that's useless at that point. I don't, that's another discussion. What I would like is for Marvel to immediately reprint Peter David's work in omnibus form, all five volumes of the Hulk omnibuses back in print, finally an omnibus of his work on Spider Man, I think you could probably fit the two, the issues and the regular issues. I mean, the web issues and the Peter Spectacular Spider-Man issues in the same thing. I want to thank two people I don't particularly like, um, Priest and Bob Harris, for being the editors who gave them the chances on Spider-Man and Hulk, respective. I want to thank the editors of the Star Trek novels for giving him the um, the chance to write a show that he truly loved. I only know one guy on earth who loved Star Trek more than Peter David, in my opinion. I apologize for this. I apologize for the pauses. I apologize for the. I hope in the weeks and months and years to come, his wife and daughters can take solace in the fact that their father made so many people, including me, happy with his work. I hope he and Leah are having fun wherever they are. Um, and I hope maybe someday I'll read an all new Peter David Spider Man comic. I think that's the place to end it. And I'm going to talk about something else here right now that's related to this that I have to do, because if I don't do it, my skull is going to fucking crack open. And it's related. Now, there is a comic book writer who's been around for a couple of years named Magdalene Visaggio. And now Miss Visaggio is someone I think is talented, and I'm also aware of that what I'm about to say is going to be read as an attack. So please, if you don't want to hear what I have to say about her in regards to Mr. David, stop this thing right now. But I'm going to say it because if I make it a separate video, I'm going to lose my nerve. But I have to say it. When Mr. David died, Miss Visaggio posted this on Blue Sky. I have read and enjoyed much of Peter David's work over the years, but let's not forget the time he angrily defended using a racial slur on a convention panel. Impartially speaking, I emailed him in college for advice on a writing career, and he was cartoonishly venomous and mocking in reply. So yeah, he wrote Q Squared and a masterpiece, but I get the vibe that he wasn't a particularly kind person. Well, I do agree with that Q Squared is a masterpiece. And I do know that Mr. David could be prickly at times, so I will sort of give you the cartoonishly venomous and mocking in reply. Although when I deal with, I think this Miss Visaggio is maybe a few years younger than me. When I would use email for the first time in college, I fucked up a lot. So maybe you got the tone wrong. As for defending the racial slur on the convention panel, I think she's referring to the Roma Pop incident from 2016. And that was so obviously staged by both David and Roma Pop. I mean, Andrew Wheeler, everybody's favorite content cop, got on a high dudgeon about it, but nothing happened. Yes, he defended the use of a slur, but that was so obviously just to get Roma Pop on the map, and Roma Pop went away 2 years later. It shouldn't have happened. He shouldn't have done it. But Miss Visaggio, The guy just fucking died. He just fucking died. There's a comic creator. I'm going to call her Jennifer E. Now, I had a really bad interaction with her 27 years ago that I never got over. And that's not her problem. That's mine. When Jennifer E. kicks the bucket, I'm not going to say a damn word about it because it's something. It's just why. Ms. Visaggio, please understand. People don't like you because you're trans. People don't like you because you say shit like this. Look at this. This is an issue of Galaxy of Madness. I have been reading this book. I like this book. I must admit, I was reading it because I hate your boy Zach and Comics by Perch so much that I love putting money in your pocket just to annoy them because I don't. I was going to talk about that book. I'm going to finish reading it. I was going to make a video about it. Now I have 7 subscribers. I'm insignificant. I'm nothing. But I'm not going to. I wanted to talk about this book, but I'm not going to because you have to learn. You have to learn. You don't have to say it right when it fucking happens. Now, I know you went through something really terrible a month ago. And I know you've been clowned by that fuckhead Zach. And it says a lot that I'm still going to buy this book to finish it off. I think it means that I hate your boy Zach more than that I care about Peter David's honor. But you got to stop. If you are ever going to have a significant career, you have to calm down. You can't fire off all the time. I'm liking this book. I was buying it to spite someone, but I fell in love with it. It's an interesting book. It's better than a lot of the books you've written. And I would love to tell people about it, but I'm not going to. Not anymore. Because you have to learn. And I'm sorry. And I'm sorry. I'm just sorry.